What is going on YouTube? Examples TCG here, coming at you with a brand new deck profile, and once again I'm bringing you guys a deck profile from YuGiOh Pro. The reason behind this, I'm currently in the process of moving into a new flat, which means I have packed away quite a lot of my stuff from at my old flat even, ready to move into my new flat, and part of that includes the deck boxes and the binders that I've got with all of my trading cards in. So unfortunately I can't actually bring you guys the physical deck of this particular deck. It is a deck that I'm currently building, and if I'm honest, I haven't got all the cards I need for this deck either. So I am still in the process of building this deck, so once it is fully built, I've play tested with it, made some changes if any changes are needed. I'll bring you guys the full deck profile in real life when I get the chance to do so. But right now, I want to continue to bring you guys some content. I want to continue to bring you guys deck profiles and all that kind of stuff. So whilst I'm still at my current flat before I move into my new one, I'll bring you guys all of the deck profiles I can on YuGiOh Pro. I'll still probably do some like real life openings. I'll probably still do some like talks with you guys and all that kind of stuff in the future, as well as obviously the stuff to do with my trading card game. But for now, with regards to Yu-Gi-Oh and with regards to like Pokemon stuff, that's all going to be done on YuGiOh Pro or the online Pokemon trading card game, because at this moment in time I have packed away all my trading cards. But nevertheless, let's get into this particular deck profile for you guys, and it is a hybrid build between Light Swans and Six Samurais. It's a deck that I built quite a while ago, but when I first built this deck, I didn't have some of the cards I have now. For example, we didn't have Raiden, we didn't have Minerva, and we didn't have Felis when I first made this deck. So it's a little bit different from the time that I first made it. I still need to play test this particular build just to see how well it works. But when I played with the deck profile before, it worked an absolute treat, so I'm hoping it also works exactly the same, if not better, this time around with all the new cards that we have. So, without further ado, let's actually get into this deck profile. So I run 3 copies of Judgment Dragon, pretty self-explanatory. The Judgment Dragon is probably the best card in the main deck. It's a card that can be very, very explosive when it's brought out, and the amount of Light Swan stuff that you play means that you're more than likely going to have enough Light Swans in your graveyard to be able to use Judgment Dragon. So I do run 3 copies of him. Then run 3 copies of Lumina. This card can make your plays a lot easier, and if you draw into your dead draws such as your Felis or your Wolf, you're able just to discard them for Lumina and then summon something from your graveyard. So it's a good way to get rid of dead draws, and it's also a good way to summon cards back to be able to then go forward and actually be able to synchro summon and make the plays that you need to make. So I do run the 3 copies of Lumina. I run 3 copies of Lila, pretty much for back row removal, alongside the Twin Twisters I play in the deck. I don't feel like running anything other than Lila and Twin Twisters is needed in the deck, but some people have played a lot of back row removal in Light Swans or pure Light Swans that I've seen. But in this particular build, I don't feel like you need to run too much of that, because it can be very, very explosive. And if you do need to remove some back row, you've either got Judgment Dragon, Lila, or Twin Twisters to get rid of it. So in a way, Lila and Twin Twisters is all you really need, in my personal opinion, for this build to actually get rid of back row. I then run 3 copies of Wolf. I was going to run 2 copies of this card, but it is so good that I have to run 3. With regards to running 2, I could run 2. I could side the 3rd, for example, and then slide it back in and take out something else for the Wolf. But 9 times out of 10, I don't really see the Wolf in my hand. Yes, okay, I have opened up in the past when I played this deck with 1 Wolf in my hand, but I've been able to ditch it for a Lumina and then be able to obviously summon something like Wolf or Felis from the graveyard. Obviously in the past I couldn't summon Felis, but I was summoning like Lilas and Wolves and Janes and all that kind of stuff. So Wolf at 3 in my opinion is quite good, because you will mill at least 2 copies in the deck, meaning that you can bring them onto your side of the field straight away. I then run 2 copies of Raiden, 1 copy of Minerva, and 1 copy of Felis as the tuners for the Light Swan side of things. Now the reason I run 2 copies of Raiden over the other 2 cards is Raiden has obviously the effect of milling cards, and if you mill a Light Swan monster, you are able to add, I think it's 200 attack to him. Let me just check. This card gains 200 attack until yes, okay. So if it's a Light Sworn monster, it gains 200 attack until the end of your phase, or end of your turn even, sorry. So that means that obviously he can become a 2100 beta if both cards are Light Sworn monster cards, which 9 times out of 10 are not. It's more than likely going to be 1, but that does make it a 1900 beta, so it's not that bad. Hence why I run 2 copies of Raiden over the other 2. Minerva's just there in case I need to get out a Judgment Dragon and I have enough monsters with enough stars in the graveyard to be able to do so. But at the same time, with regards to Minerva, she's one of those cards that I don't feel I need to run more than one of. And if I'm perfectly honest, when I do end up building a side deck for this deck, I'll probably end up taking out Minerva 9 times out of 10 and putting something in her place. But I do run her in the main deck. She's another tuner. She's a level 3 tuner rather than level 4. So it just opens up a few more plays with regards to the Light Swan side of things, which is very, very handy. And then the rest of the Light Swans are pretty much one-offs in the form of Gareth, Erin, Jane and Celestia. I don't feel like running any more than 1 copy of each of these cards. They're all useful in their own way. However, 1 copy of each is enough in my personal opinion. 9 times out of 10 you use your Gareth and your Jane to basically exceed into the likes of Blade Armor Ninja or Excalibur. But at the same time, with Gareth and Jane, you can also end up using them for the likes of your synchros with Felis, Minerva and Raiden. So they're useful in their own right, but I don't see any reason to run any more than 1 copy of each of those cards. Moving on to the 6 Samurai side of things, I run 3 copies of the legendary 6 Samurai Kizan, 3 copies of Cage Musa, 2 copies of Kaigeki and 1 copy of Grandmaster. Honestly, you don't need to run any more than that particular engine in this deck, because 9 times out of 10 you're either going to open with your 6 Samurai stuff or you're going to open with your Light Swan stuff. And with regards to the likes of Kizan and Kaigeki, obviously you can get them out through the means of reinforcement of the army if you really need them, and also reinforcement can get you the likes of your Jane, your Gareth and your Raidens. So all in all, obviously reinforcement of the army is there for quite a few cards in the deck, but at the same time 9 times out of 10 I'll use reinforcement to get out my 6 Samurai stuff if I need to have another 6 Sam in the deck, for example, in my hand even. For example, I'll play the Cage Musa but don't have another 6 Sam, but I have the reinforcement. I'll use the reinforcement, I'll get something like Kizan or Kaigeki, and then I'll basically make my synchro play turn 1 from there. But obviously you're not always going to see the reinforcement and a 6 Samurai in your first hand. So that is why it can come in handy for your Jane, your Gareth and your Raidens. But the 6 Samurai stuff that you run in the deck is pretty much a minimal thing. It's just something there in case you want to go into likes of Shien or the other Shien. So I do enjoy playing the 6 Samurai part of this deck. It is something a little bit different that a lot of people aren't expecting, especially if you've played literally like pure Light Swan to start with, and then like halfway through the match you bring out your 6 Samurai like combo, and they're like, okay, I didn't see that coming. So it's a nice little surprise factor in the deck in my personal opinion, but I wouldn't run any more than that particular engine. I feel like the engine is perfectly fine as it is, and it's just as I said, a little bit of a surprise factor in the deck, because not a lot of people are expecting you to be running 6 Samurais alongside your Light Swan stuff. So that is pretty much the only engine I'd run with regards to 6 Sams. If at all that I'd add anything else in, I'd probably just add in another Kaigeki. I wouldn't add in any of the other 6 Samurai cards because I just don't feel like they're needed. There is an argument, I guess, for putting it in Anishi as well, but again, I don't really see myself using it in the deck. It would be nice to have it in the deck, but at the same time, it's just one of those cards that will more than likely be milled away with regards to your Light Swan stuff. I keep getting 6 Sams and Light Swans mixed up in my head, I don't know why. But it's 9 times out of 10 I'm going to be milled away by Light Swan stuff. So there's no need to run any more than what I've got in the deck here, in my personal opinion. I then run 2 copies of Denko Sekka because you're not setting many spout or traps, if any at all. Yes, okay, you have the 1 trap card in Double-Edged Sword Technique, but 9 times out of 10 you're either going to have used your Double-Edged Sword Technique before Denko Sekka hits the board, or you're going to just not even play the double-edged sword technique because it's going to be milled away. So Denko Seka is actually a really nice card to have in a deck because everything else is obviously a spell, and with regards to spells, you're going to be playing them from your hand pretty much all the time anyway. So with regards to the Denko Sekas, they work really, really well in the deck, hence why I do run 2 copies of that card. I then run 3 copies of Solar Recharge and 2 copies of Charge the Light Brigade. I'd really love to run 3 and 3 if I could. However, obviously, as you can see, the Charge the Light Brigade is actually semi-limited to 2, which means that I can't run any more than 2 copies in the deck, which is a little bit disappointing, but at the same time, I understand why. It's one of the best cards for the deck, so I understand why Konami have decided, they're only allowed to run 2. But 3 and 2 works reasonably well in this deck, I want to say. Again, I need to playtest the deck and see whether I want to cut a Solar Recharge or not, but at the moment, 3 and 2 is fine until I find out otherwise. I then run 3 copies of Xian Smoke Signal. Now you're probably wondering, why do you run 3 copies of Xian Smoke Signal with the limited amount of 6 Samurai stuff you run in the deck? And I run 3 copies because you're bound to need at least 1 to 2 copies of this card in the match you're playing. And if you end up milling away, for example, 2, you still have 1 to draw into and play. So I do run the 3 copies just in case you end up milling any of them, hence why the 3 copies are there. If I ran any less than 3 copies, I'd probably end up milling away all of my Xian Smoke Signals, and then when I need one, I won't have one, hence why I run the 3 copies. I then run 2 copies of Twin Twister. I run this over Mystical Space Typhoon because you have to discard a card to target to target 2 spell and trap cards on the field and destroy them. So with regards to Twin Twisters, you can use it to ditch your dead wolves or your dead Felis if you don't have access to Lumina at that point. So that is why I run Twin Twisters. Plus, it destroys 2 rather than 1, so it's another added bonus to the card as well. I then run 2 copies of 6 Samurai United. Again, I run 2 copies because of the same reason I run 3 copies of Smoke Signal. You're more than likely going to end up milling away 1 copy of this card, if not both. And if I'm perfectly honest, this card is useful in the deck, but it's not needed. Obviously, it's there just in case you open up with your 6 Sam stuff and you have this card in your hand as well. But 9 times out of 10, you'll end up either milling it away, which is quite nice because it allows you to mill away a dead card, or you're going to be able to use it, as I said, in conjunction with your 6 Sam stuff. I would not run 3 copies. I feel like 3 copies is a little too much for the 6 Samurai United with the limited amount of 6 Samurais you play. However, Smoke Signal is needed because you're going to need at least 1 each game, in my personal opinion. So that is why I run even 3 copies of Smoke Signal, 2 copies of 6 Samurai United. I then run the sole copy of Reinforcement of the Army. I've already really gone through the stuff you can do with this. You can get your Raidens, you can get your Gareth, you can get your Jane, you can get all of your 6 Samurais, bar Grandmaster, so it's a really nice card to have in the deck. I then run the sole copy of Foolish Burial because sometimes it's really funny to see your opponent's reaction when you go Foolish into Wolf, and then obviously Wolf hits a board turn 1 and you've got a 2100 beta and they're just sat there crying. Obviously they're not, but it's just one of those plays that really, really annoys certain people that I've played this deck against in the past. So it's a card that I don't see myself ever cutting from the deck. It is so, so useful. It's unbelievable. And then I run the sole copy of Double-Edged Sword Technique. As I said, works really well in this deck with regards to the fact that you've got 6 Samurais. But at the same time, if you do play Denko Seka, this card is a dead draw, and it's probably one of the cards that you don't want to see if you have Denko Seka played. But at the same time, with Double-Edged Sword Technique, it's so explosive that you can play it, get 6 Sams back from the graveyard, and then be able to make your Exceed or Synchro Summon from that particular play. So I do run the 1 copy of Double-Edged Sword Technique to round off a 46 card main deck. So in the extra deck, I run 2 copies of Minerva. I would run 3 copies, but I think 3 copies would be too much, so I run the 2 copies of Minerva. Pretty self-explanatory in the deck, it's absolutely insane. Then run 1 copy of Shadow of the 6 Samurai Shien, 1 copy of Blade Armor Ninja, 1 copy of Excalibur, 1 Gagaga Cowboy, and 1 Castal. Obviously, Blade Armor Ninja and Heroic Champion Excalibur are there in case you've got your 6 Sams on the board, for example, 2 Kizans, or you've got Jane and Gareth, or Jane and Kizan, or Gareth and Kizan. It's just a really nice card to have. Plus, if you don't want to use the tuner part of Raiden, you can also use him for both of these. But they are there because they work really well in conjunction with the 6 Samurai stuff you run in the deck. For the synchros, I do run the soul copy of Shien, soul copy of Barkion, and the soul copy of Notoria Beast. Obviously, these 3 cards are pretty much staple in any sort of 6 Sam deck you play, because most of your explosive plays are through Cage Musa, Kaigeki, and Kizan, which means you can go into Shien, Barkion, or Beast fairly quickly in the deck, regardless of whether it's a pure build 6 Sam or just a build that obviously I'm running, which is the Sworn Samurai build. And then I do run the soul copy of Crystal Wing, soul copy of Trishula, soul copy of Black Rose, a soul copy of Scrap Dragon, and actually that needs to be changed, bear with me 2 seconds, to a Brio. The reason why I've changed the one that I just switched out, I can't even remember his name, but the reason why I've changed that to a Brio is just because, number one, I didn't even realise I could play a Brionic until I checked my ban list that I printed off and thought, oh, it's limited, okay, I'll run a copy of Brio then, because Brio is insane. Brio is just one of those cards that I really, really enjoy playing with. It's one of the cards that annoys your opponents as well, because you just keep bouncing back the cards that they want to play. So it's really nice to have in the deck. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about with regards to this particular deck profile, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. I hope you found it a little bit different. And if you guys want to go out and play test this deck and test it out for yourselves, by all means do so. And let me know how it goes in the comment section down below. But it's a deck that, as I said, a lot of people aren't really expecting, especially when you either open up with 6 Sams and then start playing your Light Sworn stuff, or vice versa. They're just going to sit there and just going to be like, okay, what am I playing against right here? So it's a deck that can stun people quite easily, and at the same time it's a quite explosive deck. It is a deck that I would class as like a fun deck rather than a competitive deck. But at the same time, back when I played this deck for the first time, when I didn't have the likes of Raiden, Minerva, or Felis, then I was still able to beat like the top tier decks back then. Yes, okay, sometimes it was through luck, but at the same time, it was a really nice deck to have, especially when people weren't expecting it. But nevertheless, guys, that is going to do it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe to the channel for more trading card game content. As I said, most of the content that you'll be seeing as I go forward for the next couple of weeks will be on YuGiOh Pro, or the online Pokemon trading card game. When I move into my new flat, I'm actually going to have a dedicated area in my office for trading card game content, both for my trading card game and for Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon. So hopefully I can bring you guys some more content when I end up moving into my new place. Nevertheless, guys, thank you so much for watching. Link in the description down below if you guys are interested in Destiny 2 or Destiny in general, solely because that is where I'll be uploading all of my gaming stuff for Destiny 2 and Destiny until the full release of Destiny 2. I have uploaded a few videos already. If you want to go and check them out, by all means do so if you wish, and also drop a subscribe while you're over there as well. But nevertheless, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I shall see you in my next one.